I'm here today with Nicole and James Angelino, who are the founders of a really great organization called Joey's Little Angels. And we're going to hear about the organization. We're going to hear about the history of the organization and all about the great work that they're doing today. James, Nicole, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So Joey's Little Angels, tell me a little about the history and how you got started building your foundation.
So, you want me to handle it? Okay. Sure. So, approximately 10 years ago, our son Joey was diagnosed with a rare genetic disease. He was diagnosed at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and he was diagnosed with Hurler syndrome. Not having much research about the disease, Nicole and I both, did some investigating, and we found that although there was no cure for the disease, that there was treatment. And we found that the best treatment was at Duke University Hospital. With that information, Nicole and I, we transplanted to North Carolina from New Jersey. We both left our teaching positions in Hamilton, and we left our eldest son home, Nicholas, who was a year and a half at the time, a little more than a year, with our family to take care of him while we took care of Joey down in North Carolina. While we were down there, we had the best doctors to help treat Joey. We met some of the greatest people, strongest people, doctors, nurses, staff, and the families that truly have become part of our family. Joey was treated for 7 months, and after a tough battle, he passed away, and at 15 months of age. And Nicole and I made it a point to, we wanted to make a difference in his name and do something that would have a positive impact on the world. So after things kind of settled down, we talked about Joey's Little Angels and what we wanted to do and what our mission would be. And the mission essentially is to help families with a sick child undergoing medical treatment, to help them with finances, whether it's medical, whether it's a mortgage, any bills that they might have. We basically just wanted to ease the burden that they had.
And I think when we were staying at Duke, we were on a floor called 5200, and it was children that were all getting transplanted, but they all had a different disease, or some was another form of another genetic disease, or cancer, leukemia.
Sure.
So I think that being said, we met some of the most generous people, while we were there, that helped all of us there.
Now, what was the condition that Joey was diagnosed with?
Hurler syndrome.
Yeah, Joey was diagnosed with Hurler syndrome.
Hurler syndrome. And how does that present? I mean, Joey's very young at the time he's diagnosed. How did you know something was going on?
So about 2 months old, it was one of our regular visits, and I went to the pediatrician. I said, he's got a little bump on his back. Can you just check it out? He checked it out. He was meeting all of his milestones at the time. He says, he's fine. Let's just keep an eye on it. We went back at 4 months, and he was meeting most of his milestones, so there wasn't a concern at that point.
Was the bump, you could see it, or when you
could
you feel
but
it?
you really could feel it.
There was a little bump on his
spine. And I think after a lot of just kind of pushing the pediatrician, we eventually went to an orthopedic, where the orthopedic from CHOP said, it's kyphosis. That's what he had on his back. She said, but I think you should go get genetic testing done, because sometimes kyphosis has a syndrome attached to it.
Got it.
As soon as we left that office, we made an appointment for a geneticist. And when we went to CHOP and met the geneticist with Joey, he just looked at him and knew what he had.
So is there a biomarker for this disease?
So it's it's a recessive
It's called
trait.
It's mucopolysaccharidosis is the umbrella.
But we both have to carry it in order for you to have a child with it.
Got it.
And since we had Nicholas first and he had no signs of that, we never knew. We don't know of any other person in our family, either one of our families, that had this disease prior to us.
Sure. So you go to the geneticist and they run some tests and it comes back. And so you mentioned that you began to go online and do some research. Where did you go? I mean, and what was that journey like?
So the first thing they told us was, don't go online. and don't read because you don't want to, you can scare yourself.
Sure.
And if I could just piggyback on what Nicole said, I have to say that when we went to all these doctor's appointments, both of our parents were with us the entire time. So from the get-go, our families were there to support us, and one of our siblings was taking care of Nicholas at home. So from the get-go, we had great support. As far as when he was diagnosed officially, they told us what they thought he had. That was December 15th. And, we asked, is there a cure for this? And they said, no, there's only treatment. And so we said, well, if it's untreated, what happens? And essentially what happens is they said he would become blind, deaf, and mentally disabled and probably die by age 5. So with that information, of course, we took that home. We did our own research, became investigators, and like I said before, we did our due diligence and research, and we went to Duke.
And we did meet a nurse at one point when we were at CHOP, and she thought we were in the oncology department at the time, and she thought that, that's what we were there for. And we explained, she asked us why we were here, and we told her, and she says, I used to work at Duke on 5200. And we were like, really? And she says, I can get you in touch with the nurse coordinator that could get you in touch with the doctor, the lead doctor. And that's essentially what ended up happening.
Were they able to pair you up with another family, or were they able to say, here's somebody that you might want to talk to that's been through the journey or going through the journey as you're trying to figure this all out?
At that time, they told us that Joey was the first child diagnosed in New Jersey. That's what they told us. So we really did a lot of research. And like we said, we looked into the Mayo Clinic, we looked into CHOP, but Duke, they were very receptive when Nicole called, and the nurse practitioner and the nurse coordinator. And we even spoke to our doctor, Dr. Prasad. She packed up and was gone in days because it was that critical that we get down there and get things going.
Mm-hmm. So you get down to North Carolina, you're at Duke, and what happens? You walk in, you've got Joey, you're at home.
So when the ball started rolling, Nicole and her father, her father took care of Joey. He spent days, because he was he was a baby. Mm-hmm. He would spend the days with him, take care of him, and he was retired at the time. And he drove to North Carolina with her. Nicole, one of her brothers, also lived in Raleigh, so that kind of helped tremendously. They went down and stayed with him. I stayed home to kind of get everything in order, work, Nicholas, bills, everything sorted out, and I ended up going about 2 weeks after she left in January. Yeah.
So when you get down there and you go down with the understanding that there's no cure, and that if you do nothing, that the outcome doesn't look great.
Right.
When you get to Duke, are there options? Do they say, well, we could go down this path, or we could do that, and here are the...
Well, we were going down there knowing that we were going to get a cord blood transplant. That was our goal, our mission. Prior to that, we had to do a series of tests. They had to check him from head to toe to see where he was prior to him getting a transplant. They had to remove his tonsils and adenoids. It was, they had everything set up for us as to where we were.
Our roadmap was set.
It was set. We just had to kind of follow it, see what kind of condition. A lot of children that have Hurler syndrome have hydrocephalus, so their heads are a little bit bigger, so some require a shunt prior to. Mm-hmm. So they had to check just to see, his heart, his eyes, his muscle, everything was pretty much checked.
A lot of preliminary things had to happen before he started his chemo and his treatment.
And we would have to go to a developmental doctor just to see where he was developmentally, to see how far he was in speech or just everyday things. And then after all those assessments, then they would pretty much confirm whether or not he would be a good candidate for a transplant.
So they're taking all the baselines, right? All the measurements. They're understanding where he is today, because we want to see if this transplant is going to allow us to move the needle and how much and how fast.
Correct.
And then what's the course of therapy, ongoing. So you do all these tests and you get down there, and how does that journey begin? So is it right away?
The doctor, we sat in, me, my dad, and the doctor, and Joey, and the nurse, and he's rattling off everything and telling us everything. And, you know, as much as I'm trying to take it all in, I just feel like we got to just kind of move forward. And that's kind of the attitude I had. Like, they were in the driver's seat and I was just there to kind of.
So, Nicole, how important is it, do you think, to have somebody else there, another set of eyes and ears? Because you're, at this point, you're overwhelmed,
There's
right?
nothing that I did when I was alone. Like, there was never a doctor's appointment that we went to that it was just me or just James. There always had to be somebody.
There were our note takers.
Right.
You know, we would try to listen and absorb everything, but like I said, we always had, you know, her father was with her in North Carolina, and all of our parents were with us anytime we went to a doctor's appointment. So again, you need those extra eyes, extra ears.
Because you can definitely miss something.
Everyone's hearing different things, and we'd go home and kind of get everything together and, you know, try to figure things out.
Was there a process that you had or a tool that you used to kind of gather that information, assimilate it, make sure everybody's on the same page?
We really just trusted the doctors and nurses at Duke University Hospital. I mean, that's all we could do. You know, we're both educators. When Joey was originally diagnosed, I clearly remember saying to the doctor, he said he was diagnosed with mucopolysaccharidosis. We're very simple people. You know, just explain to us in simple terms what that means. And he did. And, you know, when we went down to Duke, they kept it very simple for us. But it's amazing how quickly, more Nicole than me, how quickly you get a medical degree when it concerns your children. Yeah. Because you have to understand what's going on.
So, James, in simple terms, what were you told?
We were told that, well, number one, he was the first child diagnosed with this in New Jersey. We were told that, as I said before, blind, deaf, mentally handicapped, and die by age 5. That's what we heard. After doing our research on the internet, which we were told not to do, it didn't look good. But we felt that in order to give him a shot, to give Joey a shot to live, and it was more Nicole that pushed to go to North Carolina than me because I wanted to stay close to the family, and she pushed. And within 2 weeks, she was packed up with her father and gone. So credit to her, and it's mother's instinct, I guess. You know, I think either way, the result would have been the same. This was just, again, part of his journey, part of our journey. And, you know, just grateful. We're both very grateful for the doctors and the teams that worked with us and worked with Joey. I mean, down to the janitor staff that would come in and clean our rooms and we would talk to late at night. I mean, they were at his bedside when he passed away. So it's very humbling to know how many people supported us, not just in North Carolina, but here as well.
Yep. James, Nicole, thanks again for stopping by. The foundation that you've built truly is amazing. As you mentioned, you put a smile on a little child's face. It really brings it home, and all the good work that you're doing. So thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.